Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Continuing on our Hisuian speculation for VGC Gen 9, we're going to start talking about the new Pokemon now, and not just the regional forms. And the first one of these I want to talk about is Ursaluna. Now, Ursaluna is the evolved form of Ursaring, meaning Ursaring can use Eviolite now, that's nice. And it shares a lot of things that Ursaring has, such as the typing of normal and ground. Now, normal ground is not that bad. It has 2 immunities to ghost and electric. Ground covers rock and steel, something that normal type cannot hit very well. So there is a little bit of synergy with these typings, though you do add the fighting weakness from normal type. So overall, it's pretty good. It's not like the best typing out there, but it's definitely a playable typing. Moving on to abilities, Ursaluna has Guts, Bulletproof, and the hidden ability is Unnerve. Now, Unnerve is pretty good depending on your meta. If there's a lot of Shukaberry and Cineroars, Unnerve would actually be very nice to have on Ursaluna. Bulletproof is not all that useful. It's much more of a situational ability. Only helps you in very specific matchups that are not common in a VGC format. And Guts, which is probably what will be used most on this. Which the common use case for Guts is running a Flame Orb and then you protect with it turn 1 and now it's burned and gets a 50% attack increase through the burn, so you can't be put to sleep or anything like that. It's a solid option altogether. And I know early on in Gen 8 VGC, some people were using Conkeldurr like that with Guts, and it was quite effective. So already it looks like this can play a lot like Conkeldurr, but it does have better stats than Conkeldurr. So the base stat total is 550, and we have 130 on hit points, 140 on the attack stat, 105 defense, 45 special attack, 80 special defense, and 50 speed. That is considerably more bulky than Conkeldurr, while being 5 base speed faster, so a little bit worse in Trick Room. And the special attack is also lower than Conkeldurr, which is fine because you're not going to be using a special attack on this anyway. Its stats are actually closer to Groudon than Conkeldurr. It's quite bulky and has a lot of offense. So it's almost a pseudo-legendary in its stats. So that's actually pretty good stats overall. And this gets a signature move, Headlong Rush, which is a 100 power physical ground move with 100 base accuracy, and it lowers the user's defensive stats. Now, PLA has slightly different stats on attacks. So in VGC, this would not actually be 100 power, because it has the same stats as Close Combat. So Headlong Rush is a ground type Close Combat, and that is huge. This move is dangerous, and pretty much anything that gets this move, you're going to put it on. As we've seen with Close Combat, it is very common in VGC. For anything that gets it, you just put it on there. It's reliable damage and hits a lot of things super effective because fighting is quite an offensive typing. Ground is too. So this literally just functions like Close Combat. It's the same thing, which is very strong. This does get some other interesting moves, like you get Stab on Slash, which is not bad. Play Rough is interesting. Not sure if you would run it. It does cover fighting though. If fighting is an issue, this thing can hit fighting types for super effective. It gets Fire, Thunder, and Ice Punch. That is interesting. Give you a lot of flexibility there. You also get Rock Slide and Stone Edge. Makes sense. It has Shadow Claw to hit ghost types for super effective. And really the only supporting moves it gets is like Bulk Up and Focus Energy, which are basically just setting up its offense and not actually that supportive. It does get Bulldoze, but you would not run Bulldoze on this. At least not to use it in a supportive manner, because you're going to be hitting your teammate pretty hard with that Bulldoze. And this thing being kind of slow, it's not going to speed control well. Now, something I could really see this using is Giga Impact. That would be a very strong hit into your opponent. If you have the Guts boost, plus this 140 base attack stat, that is going to put on a ton of offense. And could give you a really nice trade if you're trying to get rid of something that's threatening your team. Now, interestingly enough, with the Guts boost, it actually has more offense than Groudon. And Groudon's pretty offensive with 150 base physical attack. This thing is actually kind of dangerous. You put it in the right team, and you have a big threat on your hands. Because that Headlong Rush might be able to one-shot almost any Steel type. I don't think Zacian is safe against that if you have the Guts boost. And if you're concerned about a flying type, this thing can run Stone Edge, but that would still be a very strong Stone Edge even though it's not Stab. Though that Giga Impact, it would be interesting to calculate just how much damage that does. Because it's probably a lot like Porygon Z's Hyper Beam, where it's just a ton of offense. And you're basically going to one-shot most anything. So definitely this is offensive. This is not a support. This is one of the main damage that you put in your team. And having Guts and a Flame Orb, it's very easy to set up. You just switch it in on the first turn, or you protect turn 1. There's some options you can do to get it off depending on what you think your opponent's gonna do. And once you get that thing set up, oh, they have to deal with it immediately. Otherwise it will sweep their team. Which you can play around that and start baiting that aggression onto it. You could also go for like a policy build. You don't even need Guts then. You could just run Unnerve. And you set it with Aqua Jet. Which I think that's a bit less consistent because this thing is kind of slow. This would be best suited in a Trick Room team. Kind of like how Rhyperior and Conkeldurr were used in the beginning of Gen 8 VGC. The Trick Room teams tend to have either Rhyperior or Conkeldurr, and once you get Trick Room set up, you find a way to switch in that sweeper, and then you just go for it. This thing plays the same way, but I actually think it's more consistent than Rhyperior. You don't have the rock type stab, but you do have more bulk, and that is very important because you don't have those two 4Xs, so you can probably live a Grassy Glide quite solidly with the high defense stats on this. This might even be able to take a Hydro Pump. And if you get this thing set up in Trick Room, you're probably getting the first attack off. So assuming your opponent actually survives the Headlong Rush, I think this has enough bulk it can take a hit even after the Headlong Rush defense drops. Which really makes this thing quite threatening. And I think it's a better Rhyperior. That is kind of what I'm seeing here. It's just a little more consistent. Even though it is a bit faster, which is not ideal, there are more ways you can play around its offense with Unnerving Guts, making it a little bit more consistent offensively. And you know, maybe you run it policy behind screens. It can take a hit pretty well then, and you just bait the non-stab Ice Beam or whatever you predict to go into it, and then you can start really sweeping. So yeah, this thing looks good. If this is in the beginning of Gen 9's competitive format, you're going to be seeing this in Trick Room teams. This thing is going to be a threat, and you're going to have to prepare for it. At least have an answer for Trick Room, just to keep this thing from being too threatening. Now, this doesn't work quite as well in a format where box legendaries are legal, because then you end up with stuff like Calyrex Ice Rider, which is basically a huge counter to this poor thing. So in a format with those legendaries, it's probably not going to be common, but that usually doesn't happen until about a year or two after the new gen is out. So that first 1 to 2 years, you're going to have to prepare for this thing, and it's going to be pretty good. Now, you can't just throw it in any team and expect it to do well. It does have to be set up, which means you do have to build a team for it. It's not like Incineroar where you can just throw in any team. But it is a strong offensive option, and I predict it will be quite common, at least for a little while. I could just imagine this one-shotting a Metagross with Headlong Rush. Oh, that would be fun. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.